Right, I'm honoured to say that the last speaker is somebody who needs really no introduction. I feel quite humble to have that task. He's perhaps the greatest ever filmmaker, and he's done more than all of us here in his way to put together to all of us here put together. Sorry, than politically and artistically to win people to socialism with the most powerful, moving, and inspiring films. But he's not only a filmmaker, he's a socialist activist, and I'm very proud to welcome Ken Loach. Ken, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Very good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sure.
Very good. Well, I can't live up to that billing, but it's very kind of you. And if if you see my hand moving to the screen sometimes, it's because I can't understand this technology and have to keep tapping it for reasons I cannot explain. Anyway, thanks for the privilege of saying a few words. Um, and it's a very important moment. This, I mean, it's after some of us have spent many years in and around the labour movement, and I think this is as critical a moment as I can remember, for the reasons people have said. The rise of the far right and led by Trump and echoed here by Farage. The Labour Party, again, as people have said, that is now so far right that it is in its actions, it's indistinguishable from the Tories and the Liberals. And we have so many big issues that confront the appalling, unprincipled actions of Starmer and co. in their foreign policy. So there is a huge demand and a huge need. And I think that is best presented as a demand for political representation. It's the historic demand, as people have said already, it's the historic demand that led to the foundation of a party for Labour, of Labour, and it is the historic demand on which we should plant our flag. We demand political representation because we have none. And it is in the interest of as someone again has rightly said, it is the interest of the great majority, the people, the working class. Now, what unites us now? And I think this is an important point to make. What unites us? What do we unite around? And I think for that, we need a set of clear principles. And this is not a manifesto. This would be not a series of a program for an election. These are the fundamental principles on which our movement would stand and the party would stand. For example, I mean, it would be based on international law and the defense of the universality of human rights. It would protect the environment and absolutely to protect to end the danger of climate change. And in that we have to be absolutely ruthless and clear. And when it comes to the economic model, I mean, I think it's very hard to do better than historic wording, again, of the Labour Party, which was, and I'm reading from my old party card, if I can read it, to secure for the workers by hand or by brain the full fruits of their industry on the and I can't read this, but we know what it says, on the basis of common ownership of the means of production, distribution and exchange, with the most democratic, effective democratic system of control that can be found, a word to that effect. And I think that's important because it covers everything. It covers our democratic control of a planned economy on which there is no space for private profit. It is based on the interests of the working class. Nobody's ripping anybody off. And we control them, what is produced, how it is produced, and whose interest in whose interest it is produced. It provides security of work, and it plans the whole economy. And I think that's the model on which we can base. It includes everything. And that takes us then to the next point I want to make, which is this. We have finally to explode the contradiction at the heart of the Labour Party. Because if you look back, and some of us, members go back a long time, but every decade, Labour has betrayed. Every decade. You go back to 1926 and Ramsay MacDonald, who sold out the miners in the general strike. Whiz forward to Kinnock and Hattersley, they did exactly the same. A few words about Neil Kinnock's links to the miners, but not a word of support for the miners in struggle. Of course, it gets to Blair, and Blair abandons Clause 4 because it is the opposite of the world he wants. And we remember Mandelson doesn't care about the filthy rich as long as they pay their taxes. And the contradiction is this: how do they pay for the social services they want? They want to provide. They have taxes. The wealthy pay more taxes. How do they make their money? By making profit from the working class. That is how they make their money, and that is what the Labour Party relies on taxing. And that is, so you have a Labour Party working to support a system which exploits labour. And that is the contradiction from which they will never escape, as long as they think they can manage capitalism. And that is the problem. That is why we need a new party. And that is why we need a principle which is centred on the interests of the working class, not on a system which is in the interest of the ruling class with a bit of charity thrown in. And that's really important, as I think when we form a new party. And I think that we also, there's also lessons to be learned from the last, from the extraordinary time when Jeremy Corbyn, through an accident, a mistake by the right wing, Jeremy Corbyn was leader. And what we saw, and this is, again, I think is the prime lesson, we saw when, even though it was quite a modest programme, we saw the full weight of the state out to destroy him. And, well, destroy the leadership, the project. And to do that, we tried to destroy Jeremy Corbyn. And I think it was not only, it was the press, of course, but it was also the broadcasters led by the BBC and including Channel 4. And we know the smear they used, it was anti-Semitism. And that was, again, remember the infamous Panorama programme. That was the BBC. And remember the general who wrote in the Times that Corbyn would not be allowed to be a Prime Minister. So it will be the state. We have to face the full weight of the state again. And it will be more intense this time because, of course, if we begin to be successful, then it will be very intense. And we face that. I think we can also this time, the second lesson I would say, is that we can afford to be more proactive in our defence and take the fight to the opposition. For example, just to take one example, they accuse someone of racism. Okay, our answer is, well, who are the racists now? We talked about the lessons from the past, Jeremy's time as leader, and I think the other thing to say along about that is that Jeremy took a huge amount of abuse, and I think many of us have a huge respect and belief in and for such a principled, brave man, and a lot of affection too, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And I think so. I think one lesson we have to learn from that period is that we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared for the attacks, and we have to be prepared for the threats, and we have to prepare for legal challenges for the ideas that we shall want to put forward, because they are massive. There's also another difficult area that I think we've got to really consider, and that's this: there will be questions that if we make any progress, if we cut through the mainstream media, there'll be questions that are the right-wing agenda that we shall have to deal with. And just let's think what they are. I mean, first of all, is how are you going to pay for all these changes you want to make? How are you going to pay for them? And for that, we need socialist economists who can explain where the money comes from a socialist economy, from a publicly owned economy, a planned economy, because of course that's where it comes from. But it'll need a good economist, several good economists, sharp economists, to make that very clear. Second question: immigration. Are you going to leave the borders open? If you're going to have a city the size of Bristol coming in every year, we've got to be ready for that, because that's the terms in which it will be put, and we've got to have people who can answer that very clearly, with the humanitarian position we take, the human rights position we take, but also the international position we take, but in a way that is clear and will persuade people who are flirting with Farage. So we've got to be aware that question will come, and the aggressive manner to which it will become, and have a clear answer ready. Another question, which again is the right-wing agenda, but how are you going to defend us? If you're going to take away nuclear weapons, they'll quote Nye Bevan at us if they're sharp enough, going naked into the conference chambers of the world to negotiate. Now, we've got to have an answer for that. And we've got to have an answer that convinces people who are not without political background. How are you going to defend us? I mean, see, it's a dangerous world. You keep saying so. How are you going to defend us? So these are big questions. We've got to be ready for them, prepared, and have brilliant speakers, as we have, prepared and with the answers ready. Thinking of speakers, we're going to need obviously at one level we're going to need good economists, good lawyers. We're going to need top professionals, but we also need, as Ian has pointed out quite rightly, we need workers from the workplace who've been there, spent a lifetime or maybe many years, some years in the workplace, and who know the truth of what is happening. From the workers' experience, because then they will have a simple eloquence that touches people directly. And that's one thing I found, and one thing we all know, is that the best speakers come and speak from personal experience. And we have them on our side in their thousands. And we have to find people who can speak from their own experience and tell the truth. I think the other thing is, and again, this was touched on by the speaker just when I rejoined you. This has to be a democracy. We cannot have imposition from a central clique. No, clique's a bad word because they're all good people, but a central group. It has to be democratic. And have I lost you again? And
No.
the structure has to be democratic, and I think there's a process we will have to go through, it's this. I mean, that to be a call for representation, as I said early on, a call for political representation. We need to have a private delegate meeting from all the campaigns, young and old, social issues, international issues, all the campaigns, maybe there's a genuinely democratic steering group to bring forward all the proposals for a constitution, for the principles we would stand on, and also for the leadership, the process of electing a leader, and that is central. And again, if I mean, Jeremy is in a very unique position, and his, as I say, I think we all have huge respect for him, and for his courage and his principles, and his and as a man, a huge respect, and his courage at the last time. But I think we will also need younger voices. We need other generations. We need a collective leadership. And now exactly what role the older politically experienced people use is that's a matter for the whole movement to decide. But it has to be a democratic decision. It cannot be imposed at the outset. I think that would undermine our commitment to a democratic organization. But that's no disrespect to anyone. I think it's a point of principle that everyone would understand. Look, this is a critical moment. It's a moment that we can grasp because I think people are ready for new ideas. They're ready to be radical in the way I think they never have been before, because they've seen the Tories, they've seen Starmer, they've heard the cliches, they have no time for it anymore. Between them, Starmer and the Tories have destroyed the old politics. Farage is ready to step in. We have to be there. And this is a historic moment. It's a possibility. It won't last forever. And to finish on a quotation, not from an old socialist, but from the greatest writer of them all, William Shakespeare, who said in Julius Caesar, "There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, will lead to fortune. Now is the time. Solidarity, comrades."
Very good. Thanks very much, Ken.
Thanks.